Are you there? Hello, and welcome back to my channel. This is Kristen from krisdoesbeauty. I do hair videos, and today we're doing like this weird thing that I don't think I've ever seen before. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and people haven't done this. It's just something I've never seen before. Long story short,
we just moved, and I've been moving through my DVDs and all this, and let me just also say this isn't my whole DVD collection. But anyway, I'm a weird person that I get the organizer every year, my daily regular organizer. And I write, so for each week, leading up to Halloween, I go in, and on that Saturday, I write in, pencil in a movie, and what I do is I go to Halloween, and then I go back, and like I put my favorite Halloween movie on like Halloween night, and then a week from that, I do the next one after that, and then I kind of so on and so forth, and then I lead it back to whenever in summer that it starts, and basically what I'm saying is that's about to start for me in the next few weeks. And then I use that movie, what I just watched, and then I film
and get ready with me, and I make these things called Spooky Scary Saturdays. And long story short, I'm about to do that. I've already set up my list, as well as I've organized my horror movies and all of those movies together, and I've got everything organized, and I just figured, why don't we go through and I explain my favorite horror films. Before we hop on into that, if you are new here, go ahead and hit that like button and let's subscribe and that bell notification to be notified when I upload videos. And let's go ahead and roll.
Hey, this is Kristen from the future speaking, and just so you know, I have a lot of DVDs that I just divided this into a part 1 and part 2, so stay tuned for next week to finish.
So, first up on the list is not actually an actual horror film, even though it definitely has a psychological thriller aspect to it, and this is one of those weird movies that I just really enjoy watching for the pure smarts of, well, the intellectual value of this movie, kind of, or emotional. I don't exactly know. Without spoiling too much of it for those who have not seen it, I really like movies that have a very good twist to them. I will say this one definitely for me had that in it, and I think that's why it is a classic for me, and I'm going to continue to go back to it, especially because, you know, Trent Reznor did the soundtrack, well, score for it, so of course it's always going to be a favorite and always in my collection.
The primal questions of any marriage. What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What have we done to each other?
Next is one I typically always watch starting in August time. Ever since I saw it, I love the first season of American Horror Story. I own it just because I will watch through this so many times, and I don't trust that it'll always be on Netflix. I like to hold on to this, and it is a treasure that I recommend for people, especially people that like horror aspects of things but don't necessarily like being scared or anything like that. I believe American Horror Story you can watch and it's not going to really scare you, but it has a really good plot.
Next stop on our tour of departed souls, Murder House.
Next I have one that I've seen, even though it is still in the packaging, and you know what? This is one that, even though I hate, actually, to be honest with you, I don't know. M. Night Shyamalan, for those of you who know, he's very notorious for his twist at the end, and a lot of people really, really hate the twist in The Village. However, I might think this is one of my favorites of his, and one that I could actually keep on going back to, and it doesn't really bother me necessarily. So, this is one I'm going to put somewhere special and watch this year.
We do not stray into their woods. They do not come into our village.
The Conjuring. I still have yet to see The Conjuring 2. I hear it is amazing. I really like The Conjuring just because I do like the director, James Wan. I really like James Wan's work, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Insidious, but that's a whole nother thing. I really like The Conjuring because, of course, I am a period person. I love anything 50s, 60s, 70s, anything of that nature, and I love the 60s aspect of this movie, so that is why I like to keep it in my collection.
The cellar where the doors just opened on its own. Give us a sign that you want to communicate with us.
What are you guys?
Well, we've been called ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
But we prefer to be known simply as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Misery, with good old Kathy Bates here. I guess it was one of her first roles, I believe. I don't really know. I know I only saw her first in Titanic, like most of us, but then was told years later that I was very similar to Kathy Bates in Misery. But I definitely will say I've only seen this movie once. I watched it around a few Halloweens ago, a few falls ago, but I really like this movie and do definitely recommend everyone else checks it out at least once, just because it's just a good, easygoing-ish movie that I think it's it's a Stephen King based movie, so highly recommend.
In the meantime, you've got a lot of recovering to do. There is nothing to worry about. You're gonna be just fine. I'm your #1 fan.
For anyone who ever wants to experiment with anything, it's funny, but it's not. Like, it's not a comedy or anything. I think it is meant to be taken seriously. Something I would compare this to in a way is like Cabin in the Woods. It definitely has that same feel to it. Probably not with as great of a budget, but definitely of that same time period. Well, modern filmmaking time period. It's a good one. It's funny in a way, even though, again, a good twist. Just cheap. I bought it.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Calm down!
This one I definitely got for the first Lost Boys, even though I don't watch it probably as often as I should for being a huge vampire fan like I am, and then I got it for Queen of the Damned, mainly. Eventually I'll get around to watching these two, but for right now, these are the two I always go back to.
The question provoked an irresistible urge. I am the vampire Lestat. It just rolled out of my mouth.
Interview with the Vampire, one of my favorite vampire tales, gives you a good perspective of things, and in my opinion, I feel like this is definitely probably what started the foundation for things like True Blood and those different perspectives of different, vampires that were kind of depressed about being vampires, but it just gives you another perspective.
Don't be afraid. I'm going to give you the choice I never had.
Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm sure a lot of horror fans and vampire fans out there will, of course, give me a lot of crap for this one being my go-to, but I love Gary Oldman. I do love Keanu Reeves, even though he does not have the best accent in this movie. I love Winona Ryder, and who else is in this cast? Oh, Anthony Hopkins, of course. I really love the 90s Bram Stoker's Dracula. I think it's the classic, and I will always grab to it first in my horror collection if I want to do anything vampire related. These two Deckers here, even though, again, have it in its wrap packaging, that's because I watched it, I think, on Netflix or whatever, but I am one of those who really likes the first Cloverfield, even though I know it was a time where this quarantine, other movies were doing the found footage and camera kind of all over the place, but I will say that I have watched this one since watching it the first time and throughout the years, and I really think this has withstood the test of time, and I could see even getting bigger as time goes on, and especially with all of this one, I think is a good one. I really like John Goodman. I think it ties in ish in a sense, kind of. They're not really connected at all, but I guess they're connected in the sense of sci-fi apocalyptic things going on. I could see it being a series, even though the Netflix one was terrible. So sometimes I pick up cheap movies that I would find out about at FYE when that was still a thing and shopping in person was still a thing. I picked up Hellraiser because I know it is definitely a classic, and even though watching it once, I don't think I really got it or got out of it what I should. I'm going to rewatch this year, actually. I'm going to put this in my watch again pile just because I know that Pinhead is such an iconic figurehead in the horror realm, and not to mention, as I look into the history of it, I find that Hellraiser I didn't realize was so big in the gay community and the BDSM community, so I just want to know the history of it and what it stands for, and really just dive fully in this year and really see what everything is about with the whole Hellraiser franchise.
Hellraiser, a film by Clive Barker. We'll tear your soul apart.
Stephen King's It. I watched this once before, and I was not in the right mindset to be watching it then at that time, or the age, I would say, to really fully appreciate it. But we did watch this last year at the River, and I will say, having new perspective, and after I rewatched it at that time after the newest remake had come, and I really liked the first remake. I don't really think I like the sequel to it or the second part of the remake, but I don't know if that's because I just watched this beforehand. I don't know, like I've only watched the second part once in theaters, and maybe rewatching it again I would maybe get a different perspective on it. But I definitely will say, after watching the original again and realizing that John Ritter was in it, I don't know why I did not realize that before. Seth Green's in the original. I definitely have a newfound respect for it, and might grab this one in the future as I do my Halloween marathons moving forward. Plus, I think this would be a really good one to watch with my nephews. They're finally at that age now.
Ha! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you. Every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true.
28 Days Later. Arguably the best zombie interpretation, zombie film that is out there. My first exposure to real zombies and apocalyptic scenarios, things like that. And I will say, it's by far my favorite zombie movie story there is, and just the filming of this movie is just something that it's its own thing entirely. I love Cillian Murphy. I want to say this was his first, I think, bigger movie, but really love this movie, and just a staple that I think all horror fans should watch.
And lastly, meet Mela.
And last on this little group, we have something that we just watched on 4th of July because I thought it was very fitting. We watched the first, I think we watched the second two. We watched both Purge movies, which, like I said, very fitting right now, it seems, in life, and 4th of July. It was too good to pass up the opportunity. So, The Purge.
This is not a test. This is your emergency broadcast system announcing the commencement of the annual purge sanctioned by the U.S. government.
Thank you for watching my crazy, wacky, spooky scariness. And again, if you have not yet still, and you're still watching, hit that subscribe button or that like button or leave a comment. I hope you had fun, and I will see you on our next video.